Ferrara, as well as Esther Manheimer. From there, myself, of course, I'm present, as I can be. Chief Deputy Blake. Pat Freeman. Here. Sylvia Clement. Danny Cohen. Judge Thornburg. He's right beside me. I see him. Todd Williams, I think Meredith is en route. Sam Sneed. He'll be coming in. Tiffany Ihanacho. Donna Roos. Chief Zach. Justin Dow.
Here.
Julia Horrocks. Susan Avett. Here. Rachel Nygaard. Present. Deborah Campbell. Here. Lori Anderson. Joseph Hackett.
Here.
Julie Reisdorf. Here. All right. We'll make note of others as they come in. For the consent agenda, you should have received the November, the agenda in advance, but also the August minutes for the JRAC. We already made note of some changes that needed to happen. There was a discrepancy. Nellie has them pulled up here on who made the motion to approve the consent agenda, as well as towards the end, the motion to adjourn the meeting. So those adjustments have been made here. Any other thoughts or recommended edits to the minutes? Julia's name is spelled wrong. Looks like here.
Yep, I got that fixed.
Move to accept the consent agenda as state corrections.
We have a second. Moved by Tiffany. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, the consent agenda is approved, and we will follow the agenda as presented here. First up is Dr. Lee Creighton providing our recurring update on justice system staff.
Just have to draw my own presentation here. Get it started.
I need to stop sharing, Lee.
I think so, yeah. Or maybe, I don't know if it can do a dual screen or not. It's fine for now. Can you all see this okay? Right. So before I get started on the topic today, which is the female population and what we're seeing in terms of jail numbers, I wanted to follow up from a question that was discussed last time when I was here speaking about the impact of failure to appears on the jail population. And we had provided an analysis that looked at the percentage of bookings coming into the facility only for failure to appear, for arrest, failure to appear, that were unhoused. And the question was asked, how do we define unhoused? And so after talking with some folks over in the detention facility, we have added a new address to that filter, so that we're now looking at 225 Patton as well as AHOPE and the 20 Davidson address that we have historically used to flag the unhoused population. That did increase the overall number of bookings that we had seen coming into the facility last fiscal year that were only 4 in order for arrest, but it did not adjust the overall percentage. So that number that we presented to you all last time remains at 18% of bookings coming into the facility for order for arrest here being unhoused. So female population trends is my topic today. And so I'm going to take us back to 2014 on this slide. And what you're looking at is the average population by month for the local female population. So this does not include any contract, women held under contract. And what you see back in 2014, 2015, we were often seeing population numbers in the right below that 50 line. Saw a few months that we saw the population rise above 60, but typically we were in the 50s and 60s in terms of average daily population. That started to shift in 2016 into 2017. Things started to bounce around a bit more, but it was more frequently that we were seeing numbers in this above that 70 line. So you can see that really continued until we reached the pandemic. And that drastic drop is, of course, when the pandemic hit. And since that time, we've steadily increased. And in 2022, the population has increased even more significantly for females in custody. But just to let you kind of know where we stand, we're seeing from last calendar year, 2021, to where we stand currently in 2022, an increase of the female population that's almost 40%. So a very big jump in a short amount of time. Zooming into 2022, you can kind of see this is the daily count from the beginning of the year until the end of October. Let me see if I can get this to go away. Go on this side. One of the things that I'll point out here is over the summer, there were several days where the population was hitting 80 or very close to it. And then in October, the population was staying steadily above 70 and really in the mid 70s. What that did result in is the housing unit that was transitioned to a male housing unit during the pandemic has been transitioned back to a female housing unit. And so now the design capacity for female housing in the jail is back at 96. So what's been driving the population increase? When we talk about the jail population, you'll hear me talk about the formula. It's the number of entries into the facility and how long they stay. So prior to the pandemic, it was very slight that we started to see back in 2015. The number of females entering the facility had starting to decline. It continued to decline and then into the pandemic, and then we saw that big decline that's happened. And even the year following the pandemic onset, the bookings into the facility continued to decline. What we're seeing in 2022 is a little bit different. So this is a kind of a comparison, year-over-year comparison figure through October of 2021, which is your shaded area, and 2022, which is your line. And right around April, we started to see the female bookings start to outpace the bookings in 2021. And so right now, we're about 4% ahead of where we were this time last year in terms of the number of female bookings coming into the facility. What we're also seeing is shifts in terms of the types of charges that women are coming in on. And so what you see on the graph there is the percentage of bookings is on the axis going up and down. The top charge offense level is on the axis going across. The orange line represents 2014 and the percentage of bookings coming in where the top charge was within those categories. The dark blue line represents 2022. And what you really see in the HI felony categories is a flip, right? And so essentially what we're starting to see is women are coming in on more serious charges than they have historically, okay? A lot of that is falling in that H&I felony category. I've pulled out some charges that I'm seeing most frequently on those bookings. So you can see a lot of them, it's property and substance-related charges, drug-related charges. This is looking at the most frequent charges I'm seeing when I look at the most serious charges on the booking, separated out by misdemeanor and felonies. You can see, again, the prevalence of drug and property crimes listed here, but also too probation violations, as well as several misdemeanor assault charges. The other thing, and kind of looping back to our conversation last time with around failure to appear, is what we're also seeing is females are being more impacted by failure to appear than we have seen previously. Back in 2014, about 20% of the bookings coming in, for female bookings coming in, were coming in only for failure to appear, order for arrest for failure to appear. This year, we're seeing that to be right around 25%. What's also happening, and this has been happening actually for basically since 2015, is the length of stay has been increasing. And so back in 2014, about 6 days on average is what we saw the female population experiencing in terms of average length of stay. In 2022, it's almost 12 and a half days. So quite a big difference in terms of how long women are staying in custody. I think that's reflected in the fact that we've seen the charges become more serious in nature. So just to sum us all up, what we're seeing with the female population has been slightly different than what we've seen with the male population, is both of our driving factors are increasing. So bookings and length of stay are increasing for the female population. Women are entering the facility on more serious charges. They do tend to follow still in that low-level felony categories, and then also probation violations, and then also orders for arrest are impacting the population more than they have in the past. So that's all that I have prepared for today. And if folks have any questions, comments.
I have 2 questions. On the one that had the year-over-year comparison,
Yes.
there were that one.
Yep.
Not that one. The next.
That one?
Yes.
Yes.
What are those 2 kind of mountaintop spikes? Like the first
in
one and the
there?
second one?
So the first one is H felonies, and then on the blue line. And then the other mountaintop on the blue line is class 1 misdemeanor. And that was mirrored in the orange line as well. So there's that peak, that last peak on the that you kind of see there is a broad misdemeanor category. And what you see typically falling into there are those misdemeanor probation violations.
And that bottom axis is the months of the year?
Yes, the bottom axis is the most serious charge on the booking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So in 2022, let's see, over 16% of the bookings for females have had an H felony as their top charge.
Can you put that just up that we can't read it?
Can we click away from the one that's showing the name?
There we
There you
go.
Oh,
There it is. There.
that July.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can see, I mean, we've also seen a slight uptick with the class E felonies. It's very, very slight in terms of the percentage of bookings coming in. But the biggest difference is really on those lower level felony categories. You know, back in 2014, you know, the vast majority were misdemeanors from a top charge perspective coming into the facility.
And then how's the comparison between gender with failure to appear?
Well, so we know that the population overall is being greatly impacted by failure to appear. I don't have the male numbers right in front of me, but right now in 2022, about 25% of the females coming into the facility, the only reason for that entry is in order for arrest for failure to appear.
Yeah, I'm wondering, the reason I asked is because if failure to appear can be triggered by lack of childcare, lack of access, et cetera, then it could be that that's a driver for a woman that's a primary caregiver or something like that.
Yeah, I know that there's some work going on from some of our justice system work groups looking into failure to appear and identify root causes. The things like that for being a primary caregiver to a young child or an older adult is often cited in the literature as a reason that people give for not being able to make court date.
We were on a meeting with some North Carolina sites, and Jesse Smith from UNC School of Government was presenting on some of the things that they have done in Robeson County, New Hanover, and Orange. That might be helpful for us. I think we're trying to implement some of the things that have been done across the state and trying to get people to appear for court.
But I know what they've done, and some of them are like palm cards and the banner, and one of the counties, they worked with the local transit system. But we're sort of ahead of a lot. I mean, this new system where you can put your name in and find out, you know, when your court dates are. that's gonna be ahead of anybody's state. This, if it, once it's, functions the way it's supposed to.
Well,
In my understanding, I mean,
Robeson and New Hanover and maybe Orange are also in talks with Uptrust, which is a private company that provides all kinds of communications with clients that attorneys can do using their phones. It's somewhat anonymous. We flirted with Uptrust a little bit. We never really got off the ground, but there's pilot projects with that company. So that's also what they're doing. Now, our court notification system is pretty robust and much better than what the state has offered. So, and I think if we implement that, we'll have probably better turnout, and it'll be cheaper than Uptrust was going to be free for a year. They were offering their service kind of free for a year, and then there was a bulk pay, I can't remember, per 10,000 clients or something. I can't remember the particulars, but I was eager to see Uptrust, because what Uptrust does, in addition to tracking a client's court date, it also allows us to communicate, to send text to clients using the Uptrust software. So we can have our phones with us and not have to share our personal identifying information and still communicate very easily. And that was really appealing to me, because that's something that the county doesn't have in terms of the notification program. But nonetheless, this is what we're doing is an excellent first step.
Yeah, and I think when in the presentation I gave last time, cited some of the research that's recently come out looking at the impact of, bonds and appearance, and that ultimately when, what it boils down to is that people have financial barriers that prevent them, or access to resource barriers that prevent them from stepping away from their job or stepping away from their childcare, that the literature is suggesting that no amount of bond is going to make them more likely to show up. So it's really, in terms of getting at this study to appear impact, it's, I think, really looking at how can we get people the information they need to know in order to appear when they're supposed to, but also what supports do they need in order to do that.
I think we will make some headway, like George Starmer was saying, once we really start advertising the court reminder system, putting information in the courtrooms, getting the palm cards, and then we can track data. But even just looking at the H&I felonies, like for me, all of those are related to substance use and poverty. And so we're gonna keep seeing people come in on these charges if we're not treating the root cause of substance use and limited economic mobility in our community.
Good point. I think, I guess 3 years ago when I got here, the conversation was why are numbers going up for women? And women trends are outpacing men, the trends for the men. And so we'll hear more about why our actual clients in the jail feel like they're having these struggles through a study that we have. Tiffany, you want to tell a little bit more about the study that's pending that we hope to?
Sure. Vera Institute for Justice worked with us for the past 2 years, working with community providers and incarcerated women. They're going to release their report and their findings next week, I believe. And they're going to do a press release. And then they're going to have a community event, I believe, Brent,
December 6th.
Yes,
In this room.
and they're going to come, Vera, and Brent, you want to tell them what they're going to do? I know, DK, you
Well,
better.
you don't have to, I was not trying to set us under a press release, but just, we've been making these connections. And I think for us, we can look at the data and it's very telling, but hearing from the folks impacted, right? What do they need from a support perspective to be more successful in not entering into the criminal justice system? What does that look like and how we can provide supports around that? So if you want to add anything, Brent, you can, but I know I didn't prepare you to go into
They're going to
detail.
present the report and then also what they feel could be some good recommendations to stop that population from increasing. Things we can implement here.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments for Dr. Creighton? Seeing none, I'll say this reminder probably every meeting. We're gonna have a standing item on the agenda, just look at the data and have some discussions around it. If you have anything in particular that you're interested in hearing more about, seeing more about, you can contact me or email Lee directly, and he'll prepare that information for a subsequent JRAC. If we got it, right?
If we got it,
And,
yeah.
yeah. All right, thank you. The next item is just, and this is gonna be very brief. Most of you all recall, we spent a significant amount of time developing a strategic plan for the JRAC. And you'll hear today that there is some work happening in some of these areas. What we wanna be able to do, it says December here, but I think we might need a little more time, is to go back, evaluate all those goals that we have, determine if we made any progress, and set some intention around planning to make progress if we haven't. And so most of you have seen this, it's on our website, but this is our strategic plan. And really the goal and the intent was to, as partners, to set some attention around making impact on improving our criminal justice system. One of the things we did, I guess simultaneously when we did the strategic plan, is we added a standing work group, which is the Behavioral Health Justice Collaborative. So a lot of the things that we see here, we know that's impacting folks that we can't necessarily or should not be relied on to deal with in the criminal justice system, is the behavioral health and substance use issues that we have. And so we know that there's an intersection there. And so this group is a arm of the JRAC, and they've been doing some good work trying to make, build a true collaboration to work towards helping to solve some of those issues. So if you have updates to the strategic plan, send those along, or just reports on the activity that your organization is doing. The plan also included accountability. So read it. We'll send it back out to you if you haven't looked at it in a while. And if you can send any updates that you have to Tiffany, so that we can plan to have a report out on our progress and talk a little bit more about how we can move these goals forward in our February meeting. So it says December, we'll plan to talk about that in February. Any comments or questions on that? All right. So we'll pass it over to Tiffany and Ed to talk about the work. So the last JRAC we had, we spent a lot of time talking about, Ed was with us, spent a lot of time talking about our efforts around supporting people to restore their driver's license. And so we committed to, after that, continuing those discussions. Those discussions have happened. And so they're gonna give us an update on where we are. If you wanna.
Sure, I'll start and turn it over to Ed. And Natalie, if you want to present us an email with Ed's memo so we can follow along if we can. But essentially, based on all of the conversation recommendations from this body, we were able to find funding to help support the demand for driver's license restoration. So with grant money from Safety and Justice Challenge, Ed will have a full-time legal assistance and some more program support dollars to help out more folks in Montgomery County impacted by driver's license revocation. And I'll turn it over to Ed to talk about what that has looked like so far, where they're at in the process, and then a little bit about where they are in terms of expunction and possibly an expunction clinic.
Thanks, everybody. Just if anyone doesn't know, I'm Ed Treat. I'm a staff attorney at Pittsburgh Legal. I do expunctions and driver's license restoration, obviously. We had a 6-month contract that ended, I believe, September 1. That provided $10,000 to use for financial aid for client court costs and DMV fees. We recently executed a new contract, Pittsburgh Legal, and the county that allocates $15,000 for financial assistance, and more importantly, covers full salary and benefits for a legal assistant who will be dedicated to the driver's license restoration program. As it is now at Pittsburgh Legal, I share a legal assistant with, I want to say, 5 or 6 other attorneys. He tells me I use 80% of his time, and that's just with the expunction stuff. I really don't give him any driver's license restoration stuff, so this is going to be a huge difference maker for me. A lot of the tasks that I spend my time on, frankly, you do not need to be an attorney to do, so that's going to be huge. The new legal assistant is transitioning from another role at Pisgah, which is fantastic. I was a little concerned it might take a while to get somebody on board, but very excited about that. Her name is Suzanne Ponder. She's gonna be starting November the 15th. I think she's gonna be housed up on the 15th floor. She's got a lot of experience in the legal field, so that's gonna be great. It's gonna really make us run more efficiently. She's also gonna be a dedicated screener for the program, which has been a major bottleneck. Pisgah has grown so much recently, and there's so many new things that we're doing that I have to say, I think there are probably people at Pisgah who don't know that we do this, and there's any confusion when a client comes in looking for this sometimes as to what's eligible, what we can do, what we can't do. So having that dedicated screener is really gonna remove the bottleneck and help us move things along quickly. I'm hopeful that we're really gonna get to the point eventually we're gonna have walk-ins at the JRC. If somebody comes up from admin court, and just talks to Suzanne and I, get signed up right there. Just to give you some of the idea of something we did. The goal under the old contract was to provide assistance for 10 clients. I think we ended up doing almost 25. Some folks got as little as $10 to get a copy of their record. There was one client who got upwards of $1,000 because she had a lot of fines and fees. Average amount I think was about $400. It's a huge range, and a lot of that we were quite honestly figuring out as we go. 13 of those clients who got financial aid actually got their licenses back or became eligible to do so, pending employment at DMV. Couple others who started under that contract are probably going to become eligible soonish because of the process with DMV. Sometimes there's waiting periods, that kind of thing. So we're hoping that with the legal assistant, we can at least match that pace, if not do a lot better. And there's going to be a lot of clients who don't get financial aid but get their licenses back. Sometimes it's not a question of money. Money helps, but sometimes it actually takes some lawyer. Imagine that. So let me see what else. Been meeting with JRC staff, a lot of folks from RHA, others about referrals. We don't want for referrals, it's not a problem, but I really wanted to try connecting with the other folks in the courthouse because it makes a big difference from my perspective to know that that client already has a support system in place where I know they're getting services already. I know they have a case manager. If I can't find them, if they lose their phone, they move, change addresses and don't tell me, I feel better than I'm gonna find. And we've had great successes too with some other agencies where a caseworker literally loaned the client his or her car so they could take the road test at DMV, which could be a stumbling block for some clients. So those kind of partnerships are really important. We have about 6 to 8 folks lined up already or in progress. So I don't think we're gonna have a problem getting 50 folks helped. It's just a question of kind of deciding what we're going to prioritize on. Because of the legal assistant and because we're getting a little bit better at this as we go, I'm hoping that this is going to let us do some things beyond direct services. That's very important, but there needs to be some kind of systems put in place here where folks are more able to help themselves without me. There's never going to be enough free attorneys to do this here or anywhere in North Carolina. So I'd like to work on expanding access to pro se reliefs. There are things that clients can do on their own, and particularly in a place like Buncombe where we have a lot of buy-in. We're going to look at representing very high impact, high need clients at DMV administrative hearings. Not all clients have to do hearings, but some of them do. And the hearings are not particularly hard. It's not a trial. It's not the Supreme Court. But for a client who's high need, high impact, having an attorney in there is going to help a lot. That's very time consuming. I don't think anybody in the state does that pro se, so that I know of. If they do, I'd like to meet them. But I'm going to learn to do those and figure it out. In addition, we have a Veterans Law Generalist Attorney, Misty Green. She is training on driver's license restoration and expunction work as well with me. She's a generalist. She's got a lot of things to do for veterans. She doesn't just cover Buncombe, so she's got a full plate, but she's interested in doing some of that work for veterans in Buncombe. So that's going to help. That's going to expand our capacity. I think she and I are going to try to do a hearing for one of her clients, hopefully early next spring. Also looked at partnering with some other institutions around the region. A social worker at one of the local correctional facilities expressed interest in setting up sort of a pro se toolkit for his clients where they can start petitioning courts for debt relief before they even release. Not sure that's ever going to fly, but we're going to try it. Again, there needs to be those systems in place. It can't just be you get an attorney to do that. And it's the way that motion is intended to work is that you're not supposed to need an attorney, so it can happen. I'd like to generally increase use of those motions amongst pro se folks in Buncombe. I think that is doable. There's a web-based toolkit those motions that we're gonna try to disseminate. It's supposed to be, user-friendly and easily accessible. Just generally need to keep working to build coalitions with other providers around the state. Again, it really helps me, and I've said this to the RHA folks in particular, if a client comes to me with their record already in hand, if that agency has discretionary funds, they can spend that $10 to get them their record. I hate that clients have to buy their own records at DMV. It is what it is. I can get them for free, but it takes a long time. So folks who come to me supported, and with that network is really, really crucial. And it just makes me know they're a good risk for my time and for financial. I covered a lot there. I'm going fast. Feel free to stop me with questions.
I got a question.
Yes,
So
sir.
if we send folks over to you, you financially screen them?
If they're going to be fiscal legal services clients, they're going to be screened for financial eligibility and conflict of interest.
So if you decide they're not financially eligible for you, but they don't know where are you gonna send them?
So the Pro Bono Resource Center has
There are a lot of those.
that there is, and there's a lot of folks that we have to turn away who could really use our help, and they cannot afford a private attorney. Let's be honest. Yeah, it happened last week actually. That guy could afford it, but anyway. The first thing I'll probably do is direct them to the NC Pro Bono Resource Center's advice letter clinic, where they get a free copy of their record and they get an advice letter written by an attorney. It's not a free attorney to represent them in court, but it's a start, and it's more than 99% of most folks are going to get, because they don't even know how to get a copy of that record. It is high on my wish list someday to see access to DMV records publicly available, free of charge in Buncombe County. I know why DMV charges for records. We can all imagine why they do. We all have revenue we have to make up, but asking a homeless client to spend $10 to get their record when they may not have internet access, a credit card, and when $10 is a real hardship, that is a problem. I can get free copies of records for clients, but there's a long wait, unfortunately, and I have used the financial aid in some instances to do that for clients if it's urgent. But I would love to see a world where you can at least get your own record for free and know why your license is suspended. That seems pretty reasonable to me.
So,
Well, there's just a large group that probably are not eligible for your services, but it's too complicated.
Yeah.
And they
I mean, I think
that's where most of them are.
I think that's something that any service provider fiscal would tell you. You need housing help. You need consumer debt help, and it's shocking how low the numbers are to be eligible, but also how many clients we have, and how many deserving folks we do have to trust. It is terrible.
the aspect of like conflict out, anecdotally, certain communities feel excluded from fiscal because they've been populations conflicted out.
Yeah.
Or even as we try to like interrupt intergenerational trauma and violence, and you guys do a lot of DV work, but there's people who are usually the perpetrator who are trying to get their lives back on track and end up being conflicted out. Do they have any recourse besides physical legal, or are they on their own?
I mean, I think beyond that advice letter model through the Pro Bono Resource Center, not that I know of. Legal aid in some instances does do some of this work. I don't think they do it out here, more so in the Triangle area. I'd love to see more of it, obviously, so it's not just me for 15 counties. And yeah, that is a problem where I've seen that anecdotally. I've seen the abuser, who is the opposing party on a FISCA case, come to me for driver's license registration. And conflict of interest, as all the attorneys in the room can tell you, it's not always a black and white thing, but it is an ethics issue, and we do have to be very careful with that. And it does mean saying no to folks who would really benefit from some help, for sure.
So does that mean a person is conflicted out if the other party is anywhere in fiscal legal? Or is that a?
Sort of. It's not necessarily, the classic case of I can't represent you at two sides of the same dispute, obviously, but it's rarely going to be that. We take it case by case. Depends on the age of the case, and that's not a decision that I make unilaterally by any means. In a bigger jurisdiction, you might have two agencies doing this, so you can refer to the other one. That happens with expunctions. I'm going to send them to legal aid because they might be able to do it.
A pending criminal charge will often kickstart an investigation into restoration, right? So the public defender's office does a lot of this work because their clients have pending traffic charges or other charges, and we work very closely with the DA's office to try to get as much as we can done here in Buncombe County. You know, when it reaches out to other counties, if there's failures to appear in other counties or other states, that, you know, and there's some kind of problem in another state, that does get really complicated. But that's a lot of work that we do, particularly in misdemeanor court. We do restoration work.
People are calling our office every day about missing court and getting letters from the DMV. While I can't give them legal advice, I'll look into what's holding their license up and try to help them. If there's stuff in Buncombe we can help them with.
And I think we do a lot better than a lot of counties. It's not perfect by any means, but as busy as everybody is, I can't say enough good things about the support I get from Meredith and her staff. They're not giving away the store. There's some things I'm not asking for, but we can have those conversations. And just the willingness to listen is there. And the 415 motions that I mentioned earlier, that's something that we really need to see used at a broader statewide level. I've had experience calling clerk's offices in other counties not too far away. They've never heard of those motions. They're happening here without me, because that's the kind of access we have. So I'm grateful for that. It makes a huge difference. Yes, real quick. Expunction update. I think it's second week of March. We're aiming to do an expunction clinic here in Buncombe County with support from, of course, the district attorney's office, the judges, court staff. It's going to make some nice work for them. And a couple professors from Duke University and Campbell Law are going to provide 10 to 12 student volunteers who are going to come to us fully trained, highly motivated, ready to roll. They're going to draft, we're hoping, 200 to 300 petitions in that week using a provision of the Second Chance Act. It's called Raise the Age. Until 2019 in North Carolina, if you were 16 or 17, you were treated as an adult with a lot of charges. The Raise the Age provision makes it a lot easier to expunge those convictions than it would be otherwise. Additionally, and this is the real important piece, is that the district attorney's office can file those petitions. So I file those petitions on behalf of individual clients all the time. Okay, it's very labor intensive. It's very time consuming because we're sort of doing one petition. We're going to sort of do them in mass here. And it sounds crazy, but the defendant does not actually have to be involved. It is because it is filed by the district attorney's office. We're going to seek to notify them, obviously, of this benefit, but they do not have to be involved. So it's going to be faster. It's going to be more efficient. I would not undertake this project without the visiting professors involved, because it could end up being a lot of loose ends for everybody to clean up after they're gone. Professors Dorr and Mister are two of the experts in North Carolina on expunctions. They're the folks that I go to when I have expunction questions. So if they tell me this is going to be a value add for fiscal legal in Buncombe County, I believe them. The students are going to be out here for about a week, like I said, knock those petitions out, meet with the defendants where they can. And I'm grateful for all the support we've gotten for that. It is going to make work for people other than myself. So I really appreciate that. I'm keeping the clerk's office very busy with my individual petitions. So I appreciate that. Just one more thing, we're going to try to notify that those who receive relief by mail, all we will have is old addresses on the old court files. It's better than nothing. And we're thinking we're going to set up a website too where folks can look themselves up and see if they've received relief. That's all in the future, but we've had some good conversations. I think we found some space where we can have the students work next spring, and I'm grateful for that. There's bios for the professors there if you care. They're very impressive, very nice people, very good at their jobs. We're really grateful for their help. Questions?
Additional questions, comments? We appreciate the follow-up and coming back and providing an update.
Thank you.
Vanessa will likely send this out so people can take a look at it.
Sure.
If you have questions after that.
Vanessa, I think I have a nice one on Pittsfield letter.
All right. Thanks so much. We are doing good on time. The next item is Justice Services Reentry Programs. We're going to hear from Ron Harrison and Brent Bay.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
We can, but you want to come up? Or you can, yeah.
I'll move up so you can
Yeah.
see me. Nice. Here we go. Yeah, here we go. So I'm Ron Harrison. I'm the program manager for the Jail Diversion and Reentry Services, RHA. So today, I was just going to talk about the community reentry team and where we are, how we've been functioning in the past year, about a year and a half since we started in January 2021. So I want to give a quick overview of just our jail diversion services at the same time. So you can hold off on that now for a second. So we are inside of Bunk County teams. We have 3 case managers that are providing treatment planning, case management, and psychoeducational groups for folks that are in custody. So we have there's something for everyone. You know, people are in custody. We're looking at we're assessing their needs, what they meet criteria for, things along those lines. So we have 3 different programs. We have a substance use diversion program. With this, individuals with a primary substance use diagnosis we're able to divert them to treatment facilities. Unfortunately, we don't have very many that are accepting folks from the jail right now. We went from diverting about 5 people a week to 8 swing to 2 to 3 a month. A lot of folks, and that's just a problem that's in our community in general. Swain recovery will not accept folks from the jail because of behavior issues. They have juveniles there. Aid Act can only handle so much. So we're trying to be real creative of how we are diverting folks from jail back into the community, because that's where they need to be. Not everyone that's in there, yes, they've been charged, but they don't be in jail. So we have to be real creative about how we're going to do this. First Blue Ridge has, with some cooperation with us, developed a 30-day plan. So at First Blue Ridge, if you're familiar with that program, it's a therapeutic community. You can stay there a year, you can stay there for 90 days, but they created a program for us that's 30 days where our folks are able to receive treatment for 30 days while they're there, whether they're going to groups, whether they're addressing any of those substance use issues. Our other program is called JUST, and that's for folks with a serious and persistent mental illness. Those are a little bit difficult to work with because the resources are in the community, whether they're enhanced services, ACT teams, CST teams, they're very full right now. So what do we do with these folks? That's what we're asking ourselves a lot of the times. How are we going to divert someone when there's no resources there for them to be diverted to? Come across this barrier every single day, begging and pleading for providers to come to the jail so they can screen their folks. And trying to give folks linked to the appropriate services. That's a big barrier that we come across. If we're coming across that barrier, it's really difficult for our clients who might not have this to do the exact same thing. So with that, that's where this community reentry team comes into play. Because a lot of times we're not able to divert folks because of legal or clinical criteria that they might meet, but they still have those needs. And what we're able to do, if you go to the next one, now, what we're able to do with the case manager at 2 peer supports, we're able to screen folks while they're in custody, find out what their needs are, and see what kind of resources in the community that we can link them to. Go ahead. Our biggest thing is trying to remove as many barriers as possible before people are released. Whether that is, housing insecurity, food insecurity, lack of identification, whatever barrier it may be, we are trying to do that. Leveraging our partners in the community to try to get things established. As we all know, people get out every day, and once they get out, what are they going to do? This team meets them at the door. We will link them to housing, temporary housing. We started that first because what we found out and what we've noticed is if people don't know where they're going to sleep tonight, they're not going to go get an assessment that's been court ordered. They're not going to try, they might not follow up with probation. They're going to try to survive. So we're trying to link folks with housing prior to them releasing. We're working with several of the transitional housing folks in our community right now. And once we're doing that, that's when we're able to start tackling some of these other needs that they may have. You know, like what Ed was saying, we're able to pay for folks to get their records. We're able to pay for folks to get their birth certificates so they can get their ID, the things that are missing. We have those funding, because the funding is always there. Funding's there, facilities might not be there. The wait list to get behavioral health is long. So folks, what are folks gonna do? They still reach out. They're coming up to the Justice Resource Center. They're coming up to the 14th floor. They're meeting us in the community. Wherever they are, we are there to meet them and try to remove as many barriers as possible. Go to the next one. Next slide. These are some of the outcomes. Since January of 2021 to April 31st, that was the last quarter of us, we were able to screen 567 people in custody. Out of those 567, 276 actively engaged with us. Actually, receiving service, follow up, things like that. We've been declined quite a bit. Out of those, you can see the percentages up there. Specialty care appointments, whether that's linking them to economic benefits, to primary care physician. You have those 65% of these people refer to mental health and substance issues. Considering that we're with RHA, we have that in there where we're able to set it up for folks to get assessments, but it is client's choice. Wherever they want to get treatment from, we will link them and follow them and go to the appointments with them. 64% will maintain an housing. Linking folks to transitional housing. Linking folks with the housing authority, even though that wait, they say it's 2 years long. You know, being able to get preferences for folks that are working with them. 80% did not experience requests. That is a huge number, a surprising number. And what we're seeing is once you give people the resources they need, they won't be a participant. So I speak. 75% of participants say that do not use it again. And this is just when we're checking in with them. What we're trying to do is hit folks that first month that they're released from custody. We try to hit them with everything. We're in their faces. We're there checking on them, providing them the resources that they need. And as folks are continuing to progress throughout our program, we're not seeing that they're using. And the last one is for the folks that have worked with our community team, we have not had any overdose. So it works when folks are being provided the information that they need, the resources they need, having a dedicated team to really meet them where they are, hold their hand when they are struggling, to be able to help pick them back up. So that's the community reentry team. And then we have Brett, that's going to be discussing the prison reentry team. Any questions prior to that?
Any questions for Ron?
Ron, if you have a person who comes into the jail who may qualify for an involuntary commitment, is there any communication with law enforcement or the hospital about admitting them to whatever unit that they may be qualified for?
Pre-COVID, what was happening is if someone came in and meet criteria for the IVC, we were meeting law enforcement at the magistrate's office to assess them really quickly. Now with the IVC, you know, if they're not an immediate danger to themselves or others, they do not meet that criteria.
Right, yeah.
And so if they did, then what we're hoping is, you know, the CIT officer, things like that, doing that pre-diversion anyway, take them to their doctors, take them to the hospital rather than just bringing them to jail. But if we ever determine that someone does meet that criteria while they're in custody, we're able to reach out to the hospital. We're able to reach out and say, hey, these are the symptoms that are going on right now. This person is at danger of themselves, and then we have to go.
So it's your experience that the officers or whoever's have been, you know, who's having that encounter with somebody who may meet the criteria, they're doing a pretty good job of screening them off from the jail?
Yes. We haven't had to do very many IVCs in the past year.
Thanks.
That's a good question. More questions or comments for Ron? None. Thank you for coming up.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm Brent Bailey. I'm the coordinator of the Buncombe County Reentry Council. And just quickly, it was something, these local reentry councils, they came out of the Governor's Street Safe Task Force back in 2010 when Bev Perdue was governor. One of the recommendations that went up was to have these hubs, these local reentry councils, to assist individuals with criminal backgrounds, criminal justice involvement. And being here and a part of Ron's team, and I feel like somewhere somebody was listening to me as I kept yelling from the rooftop, all reentry is not the same. Jail reentry and prison reentry look totally different. I think Lee said the average stay for a woman now is like 12 days. But sometimes I get a woman coming out after 12 years. So somebody leaving the jail after 12 days and somebody leaving prison after 12 years, it's going to be completely different as to what they need. Mentality. You've been in jail 12 days. Your network is probably still in place out here. 12 years, you might have not talked to people in a while. And so with that being said, I'm able to focus on prison reentry. Buncombe County averages about 700 releases from state prison per year. And George Thornburg have that number off the top of his head, but it's kind of like a revolving door. So probably about 700 people are going to prison from Buncombe County each year, and maybe 5 or so maybe get a life sentence, right? So the majority of folk in prison are being released, they're coming out, and it's beneficial to us as a community to assist individuals. You can go. So the councils are this collaboration of agencies, organizations, service providers who work together to increase public safety by reducing recidivism. That was kind of the goal. You want to reduce recidivism. You want to stop people from re-entering. And for us, we define that as re-entering prison. So that doesn't mean that one of my participants, if they have some contact with law enforcement or maybe booked into the jail for something, if they don't go back to prison, I don't count that as recidivate. So that's just our program, because we're working with those coming out of prison. All right, now, I can't see that. Okay, but there it is again. Recently released from prison, and it says state prison, but we do assist there. There's a third one, people coming out of federal prison, but those referrals are very small. The majority come from prison case managers and probation parole, or completed sentence under statewide misdemeanor confinement program. So a lot of time, those people in jail may be sentenced to 91 days or more and going to do all their time in the jail. And so we will assist them as well. We treat that as a prison release. So basically, people come in, they kind of tell us what their needs are. And typically, those are going to fall in one of these 4 categories. Our program is completely voluntary, not court ordered, not a condition of their probation. They do not have to come see us. If they come, it's because they're putting their hand up, saying, I want some help. With that being said, the average age of our participant is 40 years old. So we know younger people are being released. They're just not really reaching out to us. And I like to say, because they got another run in them. So.
Brent, so the assumption is though, when they're released, they get the information about them.
Yeah, we've been around since 2014. So the funding first came from DPS in 2014. And word is around now. So, we get referrals from people while they're still in prison, but the majority do come from probation parole. So they're required to meet with everybody coming out of prison has 9 months or 12 months post-release supervision. And they're required to meet with that officer within 72 hours of release. And they're probably going to hear about us from them if they haven't already heard about us while they were in prison or a friend or whatnot. We working this out?
Yeah, I had your
I
last
think I can remember that.
Yeah.
So basically they come in, they tell us what they need. It falls into one of 4 categories: employment assistance, housing, transportation, or educational goals. And that could be from completing high school all the way through post-grad or whatnot, whatever their goals are. And the evidence says if you assist people in these 4 areas, then their chances of recidivating is drastically reduced. So if people can have stable housing and stable employment, another joke, it's kind of a joke, but I share with participants all the time. I ask, did you get arrested at work? They typically say no. I say, that's a reason to have 2 or 3 jobs. Your chances of being rearrested. But you can see, I wanted to give some numbers, 19 pre-pandemic. So 170 receive employment assistance. That's 170 people we verified received a job after coming in and engaging with us. We think the number's higher, but sometimes we're not able to stay in touch with folks. And you see the number low, 7 educational assistants. Average age of our participant is 40. A lot of them not really motivated to go back to school. And I know we offer wonderful classes and different certifications, and it's going to help. But a lot of times they come out, they have financial responsibility already. They got to pay probation. They got children, average age 40. Some of them kids getting older, they teenagers, and they just a lot of those things. So employment becomes the priority, not so much school. 147 receive transportation assistance. That's the good old bus pass. And what we do is provide that for their first 30 days, because our goal is to get them employed within that time, and then they can start buying their own bus pass. 63 receive transitional housing assistance. We pay for their first 30 days. And what we do, we ask the housing providers, because some of them do charge an entrance fee, and we understand why. You bring someone in, you do a lot of work, and then they go on in 3 days. Well, if you got an entrance fee, at least you can recoup something from some of the work you've done. But as a partner with us, we ask them to waive the entrance fee, and we pay their first month. Again, our goal is to try to get them to working within those first 30 days, and then they can start paying for that themselves. So 2019 pre-pandemic, 2020 COVID. So you can see numbers go down drastically, except here. So we still had people getting out, still needing assistance with housing, the stable housing. But not many, since many going to work, not many needing a bus, because we decided the bus gonna be free. I appreciate that. So once it kind of hit and they made the bus free, we didn't have to do the bus pass. Good, I'll be here all weekend. All right, so 21, we kind of still in the midst of it. So, but you can see numbers starting to go back up a bit. And then I don't know if we now post-pandemic, what we calling this, and this is through October 31st. So we still have 2 more months to go, and you can kind of see the referrals and the numbers and the people we serving kind of picking back up. So I kept it with the main things we do. There are some ancillary things we do as well. As myself, Ashley Chavez is a case manager. So we treat each individual on a case-by-case basis. So they kind of come in, they tell us what they need, those are their goals, and then we go to work on that. Was that my last slide? Cool.
Any comments, questions? For Brent?
I have a question.
Yes.
Just what's the primary feeder prison? Do most of the men come through Craggy before they get out because they get closer to home, or do they come from all over the state? What's your experience with that?
Come from all over. And now they try to do their best to get people transferred there close to that release date. Because if you down in Tabor Correctional, the PO gonna have to drive down there to pick you up. So they do their best to try to get people back here prior to release, but people do their time all over the state.
What about the women? Are they overrepresented in your program in terms of the prison, their numbers in the prison population versus the numbers in your program?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say overrepresented, but I definitely say we've seen the numbers of women served increasing with each year. So definitely more and more women are being incarcerated and then kind of seeking our assistance too once they get out. Another big deal with that is a lot of the highest priority for women being released is reunification with their children.
Right.
So that's a big thing we try to help them on and work with them on. And, you know, not to step on my brothers, but a lot of them don't come out with that personally like being a priority, right? For them, it's like work. They got to get to work, got to get to work. And it's not that I don't want to be reunified with my children, but I definitely don't want child support after me. So let me start working, get this money and get that stuff going.
So to Sam's point, I was gonna ask the question, but do you have demographics on All year, yeah.
Yeah, so again, initially, I thought I was sharing like 10, 15 minutes with Ron, so I kind of kept it bare bones skeleton. So I didn't go into like breaking out men, women, and all those different things. But I again, not overrepresented per se, but definitely we seen them numbers go up.
Are the women's coming from Swananoa?
Some of them, so you only have like 5 women's prisons across the state, but yeah, some come from Swananoa, some from Raleigh, some from like Eastern, but probably the majority are released from Swananoa.
More questions, comments?
All right, so know somebody getting out of prison, so send them up to the 15.
No, I guess I do have a comment. So if there's 700 releases and we're not seeing them all, is there anything that we can do from our side to, no, it's not mandatory,
Right.
but to connect, encourage, because we know if you have, after a year of not being home, you need some support reentry. Now, some people have support, like people come home, they come home to their wives or their husbands and their family, and they have the support that they need, but there's probably a gap of folks. What's your thoughts on how we can help to fill that gap and make
I would say that, so like you mentioned, some people don't really need what we offer. Like they come out, they got good family support. Sometimes that family's already lined them up a job, different things like that. So great. I think the biggest gap is the younger people who are being released and not necessarily reaching out to us for assistance. And some of that's just kind of due to immaturity, right? Like I still got, when you're younger, like you go make it. And so I still got all these plans and these different things. And that was just a little snafu, but I don't need what they offering. And they also view us as an extension of the system. So they come in the courthouse and they go see their PO. Then the PO tell them about us. So they think I'm an extra PO and I'm gonna be telling their PO about all their moves. And so for whatever reason, they just ain't reaching out. Now those same individuals, unfortunately, after that next run, you start to get tired of being sick and tired, and then you start to reach out. But I would say if there was anything you could do to kind of make the younger people being released or even currently incarcerated, to help them be aware of the services and the benefits of reaching out and connecting, I think that could help. But pre-pandemic, out of the 700, average 7, we were seeing about 300. So we was getting about 25 new intakes a month. Yeah, so I would say, couple people, some of the people, like I said, got family, and then I would say the younger people. So I don't necessarily, DK, I don't really have a plan on how to do that. But if we could figure that out, I think we could get out.
Referrals through post-release supervision from their supervisor.
So but it's not mandatory.
I know.
Yeah, so they'll refer them and tell them about it. Nah.
Oh, they'll go upstairs and then they'll go right back down.
Sometimes the PO would call me, say, I got Louis right here, I'm finna send him up. I said, okay, I ain't seen him. We're waiting on Louis.
We need wayfinding, that's why, they just get lost.
No, they come up, no, they won't stop that.
They get gone. And I'm not mad at it, I understand, I was young, I had all the sense, I get it.
So we need to give them discretion to enforce that.
Well, I think that from my experience, inmates have a better experience with their case manager in the prison. So if particularly with the women, if we got 5 points of contact in the system, we can just tell those case managers, listen, if they're going to Buncombe County, send them to this program. It's a lot different in the men's because there's many more points of contact and many more case managers, I'm sure.
That could be a violation if they didn't do it.
Well, post-release.
But I don't want to make it mandatory.
Exactly, that's the problem.
And that's the only reason they gonna do it. And now you got me bumping my head. He not really motivated.
That's the problem with the post-release referral that you were mentioning is that once they hear it from their PO, it's like, oh, if I don't have to do that, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
So I think a case manager though, hearing it from a case manager, because they often have a better working relationship with their case managers as they, as they're matriculating out of the system.
And a lot of case managers do reach out. Now, typically we hear from them when housing is a big need. So like if somebody has a home plan, then they'll give them our information. But if they don't, and they're gonna be released homeless, then we start to hear from them before they release. And credit to a lot of the people we serve, they reach out to us on their own. they hear about us and they start writing us, and so we engage from that point. But I have a good relationship with the case managers across the state, so. But yeah, so Judge Thornburg, yeah, I get it, and we want them to engage, but it's just, if you kind of force them, then they kind of only do what you making them do. And for this to be successful, they have to want it, so.
As soon as you stop enforcing it, it'll be right back to doing what they.
Potentially, and I don't know, maybe it could work on the front end. Maybe they didn't really know they needed it.
Yeah.
But right now, currently, it's not mandatory. So,
Thank you very much. All right. Tiffany?
Yeah, I don't have really a presentation, but more just of an update on where we've been. Since 2020, we have been working towards kind of violence interruption and community violence.
can we take a lunch?
Yes, please. When it comes to gun violence in our community, initial funding came from the Safety and Justice Challenge, and we partnered with a few agencies to kind of do some mentorship, economic development, trauma resiliency training. And then we worked on a plan, which JRAC so graciously worked through, and we're just wrapping it up, finalizing it, working with Kate to get it ready for publication. Since that time, we did research as well, look at some violent interruption models that Buncombe Asheville has never done before. We received funding from 2 funding sources, thankful for the commissioners. Some of that $50 million, $1 million of that went to the recommended violence interruption model that was selected, CHASM. And also got funding from the federal government, who had about $100 million that they wanted to invest in communities. We were one of the communities selected. So in totality, we have about $2.5 million over 3 or 4 years. We understand that this is a decades, generational long issue. So we're just stepping our toes into this work. What that will look like in implementation, we're working with CHASM, who does this across the nation. They look at holistic approaches, not just the street teams, but working through a coalition, and that was required in the federal grant as well. Looking at having community health workers working with communities that are most impacted. We want to do some community-based research to make sure what we're doing is evidence-based and supports, and we're actually growing and learning from it. We'll have a program manager to supervise the street team while we build the coalition. And we'll also have a county grant manager to, I don't want to say herd the cats, but to keep the ball on the train on track. I actually just finished attending a violence interruption conference. And one of the things that I think that I would love to do that we not doing well either is creating a partnership with the hospital, because of course those where gunshot victims are coming in, and that could be the first point of contact. So being trauma informed at the hospital, having a community health worker there to support them. And so that's not even on any plan right now, but I just wanted to let you guys know that there's a lot of work happening in hospitals as well, not just in communities. And so I think from this group, eventually we would want you all, our members, to be part of the multi-stakeholder coalition, recognizing it's not just the work of the street team or the work of the hospital, law enforcement's high-risk team, but it's a collective approach to reducing gun violence in certain communities. So that's kind of my ask for you all when we get to that point and we have staff in place to pull the work together.
Thanks, Tiffany. Any thoughts? We're just getting it off the ground, but any comments or feedback you want us to consider as the program is further developed, please share.
I think, well, it's amazing. Congratulations on the much needed funding. I think it's important that just how the process went from the community engagement and the work of safety and justice to actually engage it. That that research that was so important and critically done with Rob Thomas and the folks there and recommending Kaiser. It was so well done. I think it's important for the community to see and hear that the work that they did actually made it to decision makers, actually has been funded, and has the full support of the JRAC. Those types of things are intangible, but they go a long way with community sentiment, so that folks can actually know that that those people that are behind the scenes are actually working on a solution that uplifts the community voice. To Tiffany's last point about community health workers in hospitals, that's a phenomenal model. Actually, we were part of it being done back in 2015 with the Baltimore Alliance of Community Health. They actually have community health workers in hospitals at Johns Hopkins University, and so and it's been continued to grow over time. So if you need a direct contact, there they have that.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Any more comments? Yeah, I agree. I think we asked for a lot of time. We have, as of lately, asked for community to spend a lot of time with us, and it's good for them to see it come back to them, and that we're actually listening and hearing their voices and making policy and implementing programs to in line with what they told us they need, right? All right. Anything else on that item? We usually have announcements on the agenda, so I will give space to see if anybody want to share any announcement from your offices, departments, or organization. Do we have any public comment? All right. Well, we do have a meeting next month. We usually go alternate, but we canceled I think it was the September meeting, so that's why we're having this meeting today, and we'll get back on schedule and have our December 2nd meeting. We'll be in the same place here in person, and if nothing else, I entertain.
I'm sorry. There are announcements. Number one, CoThink is having their community event November 5th. That's tomorrow night. I don't have the details, but it's all over in the emails and on their website. Please support them. Such a critical program in our community. And Black Wall Street's 2nd year anniversary is next Saturday night at 6 p.m. Everyone is welcome, invited to support the local Black entrepreneurs as they get started and growing.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rachel, her sharing this with the department has reminded me. So Cheryl Rowland, who's from Asheville, college with, and he moved to DC. He was wrongly incarcerated for a few years, similar to Khalid Brower. It's like larceny charges. That finally got dismissed and dropped. He was an art major at UNCG, and then he just took his experience and created art from it. And there's an exhibit, yeah, that's not the word, but yes, exhibit going on at the Asheville Art Museum. I believe this first day is the Friday, the 18th. We'll be there for a few more days.
Months, actually. Months. I'll be there after March.
Months, yeah, sorry, months. So I would just encourage us all to check it out, support. We talk about criminal justice reform. And so he's from our community. He's taking his experience using art as a form of expression. I encourage folks to go and support the exhibit.
Any other announcements? I'll try this one more time. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Judge Thornburg, second.
Second.
Any opposition? All right, y'all have a good evening, good weekend. Grab a lunch on the way out. Yeah.
All right.
I knew I was.